Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby.
Well, welcome to Katz and Cosby. And, John, you are back after you had fun. I was jealous. It sounded like you were having so much fun.
The sun was shining, and there was a beautiful breeze, interviewing some of those people out there that, oh my God, they were standing on line to be interviewed.
Yeah, Garden City Country Club. Yeah,
very nice
it's a
people.
Beautiful place.
You're a golfer, right, Craig Eaton?
Yeah, I do golf outings. I don't really golf every weekend.
I golf, but I'm more of a fun golfer than keeping score because my score is not so good.
You had a good time in the studio yesterday.
We did.
We had wonderful people in the studio.
We did, and we had also the chairman of the House Intel Committee, Mike Turner, who talked a lot about border and security. And later on in the show today, guys, we're going to be talking with Al D'Amato because he is steaming mad about our wide open southern border and some of the new information coming out. Also, Julian Assange is working on a plea deal, and we're going to be talking with Tony Schaefer about that. And also a big breakthrough with Dr. Mark Siegel on diabetes. And it's the primary night, guys, in New York.
Hank Shankoff is going to be on to tell us what the heck is going to happen.
Yeah.
Does
AOC have a chance of losing?
I don't know. I think Bowman does.
So. Bowman does.
But he was 17 points behind. Yeah.
But then he was swearing on the stage, so that hopefully that brings him further behind.
By the way, since I've been out, China is way ahead of us in the space race, it looks like.
Yeah, very much. How scary is that? And then there's also these guys who are stuck up there, too, John. That's the other issue, too.
On the Boeing aircraft.
Yeah, that's very scary and very sad.
Really scary.
How are they going to bring these poor folks back?
Yeah, it's going to be, there's a lot of stuff on that. By the way, the other thing, too, guys, is lots of talk about the VP debate, the presidential debate, because the VP pick for Trump is supposed to be in the room, and it's said to be narrowing the field to Doug Burgum, of course, who we've had here in the studio, North Dakota governor.
He was in the studio last
Friday.
Fabulous.
And I predicted it was Doug Burgum.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's wonderful.
Smart.
He's very smart. He's got a lot of money, and he
has a very nice manner. He's a very calm grown-up, which you need in the room. You need a grown-up in the room.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a special guest today. We have the former governor of New York State, almost 12 years. We have Governor Andrew Cuomo. Governor, you've been very vocal lately, and tell me what's on your mind and what's bothering you.
Well, I've been vocal, John, because as you just reported, there is a lot going on. And how are you, Judge, and how are you, Rita? It's good to be with you.
It's good to have you, Governor.
Have you here.
Good to have you, Governor.
We've been talking about the elections, and today is primary day. But there were a poll that came out last week that, frankly, was more important than any of these candidate polls to me, which said close to 70% of New Yorkers believe that our justice system is politically influenced. Our justice system is politically influenced. And that is frightening. We talk about the threat to democracy. People don't believe in government anymore. They don't believe in the news media anymore. But the justice system was the solid pillar, right? That was the place where politics just didn't go. And now you have close to 70% believing even that is politically influenced. And that the reality is as frightening as the perception. This is relatively new. You ran for office, you subjected yourself to scrutiny. Yes, that was a decision you made, but you didn't subject yourself and your family to a subpoena, right? It wasn't that you ran for office, so you immediately became investigated by prosecutors. That's not our American political system, and that's where we've wound up.
Governor, it's gotten a lot worse. You know what me and you discussed. I think you dared to say you might run for president in 2024. And, they didn't like that in Washington. And Eric Adams dared to say that he wanted, all the black mayors in the major cities. He dared try to fly to Washington and to say to object to President Biden that the cities needed more money. Well, they shot him down.
Well, look, the weaponization of the justice system, I believe, started with Bill Barr primarily, but I believe it has continued. And this is new, and it is frightening. Again, both in reality and perception. It's who wants to get involved in politics if you're going to be subject to an investigation by a prosecutor, and your family is, right? Look at Hunter Biden. He may be going to jail, Hunter Biden, and he's guilty, but for something that they would have never brought in the first place. And if they brought, they would have pled the case down. When I was Attorney General, I used to say, John, if I subpoena your taxes and your email, I will find a crime to indict you and probably convict you. But prosecutors are not supposed to target an individual, right? The prosecutor's ethics are equal justice, nonpartisan justice, and avoiding even the appearance of political interference. So we are a long, long way from that.
A long way. And we got to bring the rule of law back to the United States of America. Otherwise, we're worse than a third world country.
All across the board, by the way. I think it pertains to our elections, but it also pertains to misdemeanor criminal actions, shoplifting, theft. The Manhattan DA dismissed most of the cases against these violent protesters who were wearing Hamas masks. And he said he can't make a case because they were wearing masks. Well, bank robbers used to wear masks back when we had cowboys on horseback, and they figured out how to make a case back then, To say today you can't bring a case because they were wearing a mask, it's laughable.
Well, what J. Edgar Hoover used to do, he had a hit squad, and they would go out and just kill him. There was no trial.
Well, the New York City especially, but cities across the country, but you feel that when the rule of law is not enforced, whether it's the protesters against Israel, whether it's the shoplifters going into these small stores, whether it's people going into bodegas and stealing things, whether it's fare beaters, congestion pricing would raise $1 billion, $700 million a year in fare beaters who just jump over the turnstile and nobody does anything.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Lawlessness. It's just lawlessness.
And they want to charge us $1 billion in congestion fees to make up for the lawlessness. And it goes into the bottomless pit at the MTA.
That is, it's $1 billion in congestion pricing, but they won't collect the $700 million of fare beaters, people who just walk on a bus and don't pay, people who just jump the turnstile. It's gotten so bad that you almost feel foolish if you pay the fare, right? Because nobody pays. That's how bad it's gotten. And they say, well, it's an economic crime. We don't want to prosecute. It's a low-level economic crime. All right, then don't be surprised. When you don't enforce the law, don't be surprised when you have lawlessness, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Governor Cuomo, I want to take you back to also because you just made a lot of headlines to your point about sort of selective justice. You also talked about the Trump case. I thought it was really interesting. Can you explain? Because you said that, the Attorney General's case in New York, frankly, should never have been brought against Trump. A lot of people are agreeing with you. Explain your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you have prosecutors now who, when you run for office, it's almost automatic that you're going to be investigated. And as I mentioned before, I said as AG, if I subpoena your taxes and I subpoena your email, I will find a case, Rita. And you go through anybody, you will find a case. And Donald Trump is a candidate. Joe Biden is a candidate. James Biden is Joe's brother. Hunter Biden is the son. They are investigated, and cases are brought. In some cases, I think they are way out of line, especially Hunter Biden, that he may go to jail for not checking a box on a gun form. It's an ATF form, and there's a box that says, "Are you do you use illegal drugs?" Okay. Now, it's a federal form. If you check the box that you use illegal drugs, now you're basically admitting to the federal government that you use illegal drugs. So nobody checks the box. If you smoke marijuana occasionally, you use illegal drugs. So there are hundreds of thousands of people who don't check that box. And here you have a kid who may go to jail. So, yes, I think it's open season on political candidates just because they're political candidates and their families.
You also had comments to make about congestion pricing.
Congestion pricing, a governor for 11 years, attorney general for 4 years, HUD secretary for 8 years in the Clinton administration. I have never seen a situation as messed up as this one. I don't know what they now do, John. You have the federal government approving it. The governor's against it. The MTA board has to vote, but they're supposed to vote by their fiduciary obligation to the MTA, not because they're a political puppet. Can they stop it? Can they have it go forward? I think it is such a legal mess now, the way it's been handled, that they're going to have to bring the legislature back to pass a law to figure it out. I think it's that much of a legal quagmire now. I think you're going to need a new law because whatever they do, they're going to get sued. And as I said, I've just never seen a situation handled this poorly.
We all agree. And the fact is, I've urged the governor not to put it into place because Manhattan right now still has one nail in the coffin, and we'll just be putting a second nail in the coffin.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, the big picture is this state has lost more population than any other state in the nation. And we have to understand that. This is a post-COVID world. It's not like the old days where you can just charge people taxes and the quality of life doesn't matter and the homelessness doesn't matter. They have an option. They will move. They can do remote work. You can be on Long Island or you can be in Florida or you can be in the Carolinas. And that's what they're doing. And they're going to continue to do it until we get the message.
The quality of life. And we've had a big discussion on the quality of life, that people don't feel safe walking around. And you got to do something better for the quality of life for people. You don't want to get run over by bicycles and run over by, it's just crazy. You can't cross the street without getting killed.
Yeah, well, look, I think, John, first it's public safety, right? And people should, if you look at the numbers, people are justified in being worried about public safety. And then it's quality of life. It's the cleanliness. It's the homelessness. It's the chaos of the city. Even something as silly as those mopeds and bicycles going, e-bikes going every direction. not following any rules. You can't figure out how to cross the street. You have to have your head on a swivel.
Governor, we're out of time. We're going to have to take a break. Governor Andrew Cuomo, thank you for continue to speak out for the people of the city of New York, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
I always will. Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have you, Governor.
And now we're taking a break. Or we're going
actually, we have Hank Scheinkoff right now.
Let's take him then.
Yep.
Let's find out what's going on with those primaries.
Exactly. Boy, huge primaries today. The great political consultant and expert, Hank Scheinkoff, of course, who's handled so many great big races through the years. Hank, we love having you here. Your thoughts, first off, on Jamal Bowman's race. What do you think is going to happen with Jamal Bowman and Latimer?
Well, first, I'm very grateful to be on the show. I heard a little bit of Governor Cuomo. We're lucky to have him around and saying the things that matter. As today's campaigns, Jamal Bowman's going to lose. This is kind of an inflicted suicide in public. He was elected because he took on former Congressman Elliot Engel and said he didn't do community service, didn't do based activities. The end result is the decided to become a congressman obsessed with international affairs, notably blaming Israel for all things, including the original plagues. And the result is that he's going to lose badly.
Hey, I mean, when you look up in the dictionary who pulled the fire alarm, his picture is going to be there.
John, he pulled the fire alarm. He said publicly that October 7th didn't happen. He publicly proclaimed the greatness of Joanne Chesimard, a.k.a. Asada Shakur, who was a cop killer and has $1 million bounty on her head for murdering a New Jersey state trooper. We're talking about a guy who just doesn't understand where he's supposed to be, and he's going to lose. But the problem here is this will not stop the left. If anything, my hunch is this will empower them more to organize better because they'll believe the failing was in themselves and the amount of money spent by Jamal Bowman's rightful opponents.
What did you make, Hank Scheinkoff, of Jamal Bowman over the weekend? I couldn't believe it. I was like, is that a member of Congress? He was swearing on the stage. I'm sure you saw this in the Bronx, swearing just horrible, vile things about AIPAC, the Jewish group that put a lot of money in Latimer, because, of course, they're offended, like many of us are, at some of his comments. But I have never seen a sitting member of Congress, and a lot of even Democrats came out and condemned it. It was so reprehensible and so, I thought, uncongressional, just undignified.
Unfortunately, he's not the first enemy of Israel that has attacked AIPAC and sworn at Jews. There was another woman, a congresswoman in, I think, Georgia, who was defeated as a function of taking on Israel in a very derogatory way, as Jamal Bowman has done, and paid the price. You know what this is, frankly? It's not about Israel. It's about Jews. He's a stone-cold Jew hater, and he's like all of them, he hides it behind talking about AIPAC. And he's angry that he's going to lose his seat, but he did this to himself, having nothing to do with Israel, but having everything to do with a fire alarm, with not focusing on constituent services, somebody that his voters, frankly, did not elect in the first case.
Craig Eaton.
Hank, it's interesting that you say it's going to empower the far left. I was thinking that it may send a message that the far left needs to be worried now because people are waking up and realizing that they are too far left. I mean, I think AOC went out the other day, was unhinged on that stage.
Unless we begin, Craig, and I hope you and your family are very well, unless we begin to start telling the truth, because the far left's agenda using Israel and non-progressives as a target is the destruction of this country. Make no mistake, and the destruction of our system. They want to be sure that elections don't occur because they want to make sure that they get elected. They want to make sure they want to people around things that they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, I met one of the DSA elected members at a function a few weeks ago, and I asked him, I'll take out the colorful language. I said, I see you're a tough guy. How many people did you ever organize for a union? I said, I worked for the Teamsters Union. I said, what did you ever do to make the world better besides complain or say it's okay to beat up a few weak Jews in Brooklyn? I said, pick on this Jew and see what happens.
Wow. Oh, Hank, bravo to you. Here is Judge Weinberg.
Good to talk to you, Hank. Let me ask you this question. Have you been following the race for the Albany DA upstate? David Soros has been fighting the fight for public safety and law and order, and the left has gone after him. What are your comments on that?
Listen, bail reform, raise the age. The impacts of raise the age are pretty significant. Probably is the number of assaults going on in juvenile facilities that have been set up now that you can't prosecute people for felonies for assaulting caseworkers and others in facilities. We have schools in New York City that are being used where children under the age of 18 are being used as gun mules and drug mules because they can't be charged with felonies at those ages. It's a very bad system. Soros understands also discovery laws that were put into place by the legislature make it nearly impossible to put certain people who ought to be in prison into prison. So if he loses, it will be a clear signal that we've lost the battle to take back our streets. And you know what? We might as well tell all the people dressed in blue and brown and sheriffs and police departments throughout the state that they should find other employment, so they're not going to be able to do much.
Wow, what a powerful and what a sad message that would send. You know, Hank, what about on the national level too? What do you think both Biden should do and Trump should do with the debates? Because the debate's coming up on Thursday. It's going to be an enormous listening and viewing audience.
The strongest issue that Biden has going for him is the economy, which frankly has improved. We lead the world in economic performance post-COVID. Trump has to somehow take that away from Biden, and Biden has to somehow make Trump what's the good word? An impossible person for anybody to vote for based upon Trump's behavior and upon his conviction. Whether one likes the case or not, he was convicted by a jury of his peers. That being said, those are the ways they've got to both proceed.
No,
yeah, it's going to be terrible.
Well, here's the other. That's what I was about to say. It's going to go tit for tat because if you're Trump, you're going to go, well, let's talk about your son Hunter. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I say? It's like being convicted by the judge in My Cousin Vinny movie.
That was a good movie.
John, that may be the case. But what the polling data shows is that a conviction of any kind would be hurtful to Trump among what do they call them? Non-ID voters, i.e. non-registrants from particular parties.
Yeah.
The blanks, the independents. That's the issue here. Trump's got to protect himself. I mean, look, he's not a runaway winner, nor is Biden. And Biden's in a better position for one reason. He is two reasons. He is the president of the United States. One, the most powerful person on the planet. And secondarily, the economy has improved. It's just the way it is.
Well, Hank Sheinkoff, thank you for coming on, and maybe we'll talk to you tomorrow after the results are in.
John, it's always a pleasure. Rita, everybody else, Greg, Judge, have a great night.
Thank you, Hank. Great to have you.
Best,
Thank you.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll probably come back with Senator Alphonse D'Amato.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Well, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is at the border today. And of course, what a mess with all the policies by Joe Biden and some horrible, heinous crimes that are captivating the country and breaking everybody's heart. This 12-year-old girl, I was just reading the story of what happened to her in Houston, Texas, by two Venezuelan migrants. It is just horrific.
Illegal migrants. Illegal migrants.
And by the way, Judge, one who crossed the border May 29th, hadn't even been here a month and had an ankle bracelet on when he is now accused of brutally murdering and just horrifically torturing this beautiful girl. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Senator Al D'Amato, the greatest senator New York has ever had. Senator, your thoughts on who is responsible for this? And boy, is our border broken.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, Joe Biden, the president, has let this country down. And more than that, he has been accomplished and supported by who? The Democratic leadership in both the House and across the board in the Senate. What the hell is wrong with the people in Congress? Why wouldn't they want to close the border, protect this country? Don't they love our citizens? Don't they love this nation? A 12-year-old girl, that's the last of a litany of horrors that's taking place every day. Every day you have youngsters being beaten, being robbed, being sexually abused, dying, etc., throughout this country. Every day you have cities that have been overrun with migrants. And people, poor people who need help, who are citizens of this country, being deprived of an opportunity. They're not put up in hotels. Look at New York City, some of the oldest, greatest hotels. What do they have? Tens of thousands of migrants living in them, getting food every day. People who go to work don't make as much money as the government is spending on illegals in this country, not even citizens. It is disgusting. It is a criminal. It is criminal behavior on behalf of President Joe Biden.
You know what's interesting, Senator? It's interesting. We will hear this week. Already we've sort of gotten a taste of where the Joe Biden team's going to go. They're going to say, they're blaming the Republicans like revisionist history.
Oh, yeah. We should have passed his Biden security bill. What would that have done? It didn't do a damn thing. Hired more agents, what? So they could push more people through the country? The agents don't stop them. This is incredible. Incredible. The nonsense. And the media doesn't take him on. You have one or two organizations that stand up and tell the truth. The rest of them just go along and they repeat the White House's statements. Okay? And I have to tell you something. This election is the make it or break it for this country. There's no way that we can have another Biden administration because he's not even calling the shots. He is not. And I'll tell you who's calling them. Obama is the guy who put in the representative who he had in there initially, okay, who dropped the sanctions against Iran. Iran then made billions of dollars in oil trade, built up their army, and they're the ones that made the war in Israel. They financed this thing.
Iran took their loose cash that we gave them because of the oil money, and they hired the Hamas and hired the Houthis and hired
the guy Senator Richard Weinberg. Good to talk to you. It's Malley. The guy's name is Malley, and they revoked his security clearance.
Oh yeah. You see, they should have thrown him in jail, but they revoked it. They caught him passing some papers around that he shouldn't have been. But he is the man who was in there prior in the Obama administration, and Obama had him put in there. Obama is behind Sleepy Joe. Believe me, that's what's going on. And you wait and see how Obama campaigns for him, because he's like the president behind the scenes, and he doesn't have to take any of the blame. And Sleepy Joe does all of Obama's bidding. It is pretty sad to watch our borders and our countries and our cities being invaded and our taxpayers being taken advantage of. And you know why we're going to do better in the African American, the Black and Hispanic communities, because so many of the workers at the lower end who they represent are being displaced. They're losing their jobs to the illegals, and they are angry about what's taking place. Here, American citizens, hardworking citizens, at the bottom of the economic situation are being displaced by illegals. Illegals who in many cases are coming in to do nothing but enrich themselves and pose a real danger to this country. I have to tell you, that's the issue. And that's where Trump has to stay. On that,
they are coming in and they're posing a danger to every one of our cities.
Absolutely. We want to be independent as it relates to fuel. We want to be exporting fuel. We can develop it. We can lower fuel costs. And if we stop this crazy spending and these giveaway programs, buying votes,
yes.
We're going to forgive the student loans for this. We're going to forgive that. And who pays? The hardworking taxpayers. The wealthy don't have to worry. It's the middle class, the hardworking.
The poor people are getting poorer, and the middle class is getting poorer. Senator, we're out of time. We have to take a break. Thank you so much for coming on this this Tuesday, and we'll see what happens with the primaries tonight. And I look forward to talking to you about the big debate Thursday.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Rita, we're taking a break, or are we going to hot news first? Let's go to hot news first.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And here are some of the big stories. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court is expected to issue several major decisions this week before it's expected to recess at the end of the month. Among them are a ruling on former President Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution for alleged crimes committed while in office. Also, the House Judiciary Committee is launching its own investigation into how the Department of Homeland Security handled the border crossings of the Ecuadorian illegal migrant who allegedly raped a 13-year-old girl in the Queen's Park recently. Committee Chairman Jim Jordan is demanding documentation and other info on that. And also another story we're going to be talking about here on Katz and Cosby, the gag order against former President Trump in his New York hush money case is being partially lifted ahead of the first presidential debate on Thursday. The judge there lifted parts of the order that banned Trump from commenting publicly about jurors or other witnesses like Michael Cohen. Trump can also talk about Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Some restrictions, however, will stay in place until Trump is sentenced on July 11th. And those are the hot headlines of the day.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back on Katz and Cosby. Well, Julian Assange, of course, who made so many headlines for the WikiLeaks and all of those classified documents coming out. Well, he is now working on a plea deal, and it looks like he is going to be released at some point tomorrow and go back to Australia. Of course, it was tons of documents. Remember, lots of very confidential classified documents. And joining us now to talk about all of this is former Army Intel officer. He is also now the current president of Project Sentinel, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. Tony, your reaction, you've met Julian Assange. Tell us about what you think of him and what do you think of this deal?
Yeah, I met him years ago when I was actually back in the days we could go on MSNBC before they went completely insane. And I was there in the studio in D.C. and we talked very briefly. And he struck me as a kind of an arrogant guy who really didn't care about following rules, which I guess you got to kind of have that attitude. But with that attitude, I think he did a number of things which obviously resulted in his current troubles. The basic allegation against him is that he proceeded to not only encourage whistleblowers, he actually tasked Hadley Manning or Chelsea Manning, depending on you want to call him or her, who was a private at the time, to essentially provide him, WikiLeaks, tens of thousands of classified documents. Some of those documents were political and very embarrassing. Others were operational. I was talking to my good friend, Captain retired Sean Parnell. Sean was actually in Afghanistan when the leaks happened. And he said that the routes of his platoon and what they were doing was actually leaked as part of what Assange put out there. So
wow.
I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, I think there are some necessary things he got out regarding the high level kind of duplicity of the Obama White House and things like that. But at the same time, he compromised what Sean considered very dangerous information relating to his operations in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I also know some folks high level in the military who were furious, who were so worried about just exactly the sources and methods because it exposed some folks who were deep undercover, and that's a really dangerous place to be. On the other hand, too, it's interesting because he's kind of saying, well, I was the journalist releasing the information, and the real culprit was it Chelsea Manning, who was the one who gave it? So is that a fair argument, do you think?
No, it isn't. So I'm a counterintelligence guy, I'm a special agent. So there's a line. Rita, if Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning, whatever you want to call him, had provided that information essentially on his own without being tasked, then that's, he gives it to a journalist publish it. There's a line. the moment that Assange tasked him, that is to say that he reached, basically made contact and said, these are the items we want you to get. The moment you do that, that becomes espionage because you've tasked him as if he's an asset. This is the same. That's traditional spying. So that's what the controversy's been. Is it one thing for Bradley Manning to release it, to give it to him without any direction? Another thing entirely if he becomes essentially an asset, what we call a controlled asset. So that was the rub. And that's why Assange has been held on espionage charges regarding the United States and sharing of sensitive or classified information.
What do you say to people, Tony, that are saying, wait a minute, he's getting off by the Biden, obviously it's the Biden DOJ working on this deal because they were trying to extradite him to the U.S. for all these years. And yet they're going after President Trump for what is it, like a salt crystal compared to the amount that Julian Assange here, Yeah.
So, President Trump had every right to have any document he so chose since he's an original classifying or declassifying authority. So I believe the Supreme Court will side with him and what I'm saying on this. With that said, Assange and what he did was something that was actually compromising to multiple levels of our security. Now, again, I have mixed feelings about this. Full disclosure, like I said, I do sympathize, and I think there were certain things he got out that should have been gotten out regarding wrongdoing of senior officials. I get that. Tony Zinni and I did a thing with MSNBC. We talked about some of this stuff, but there was a line. He crossed that line by actually, using a Manning as an asset, and that's where President Trump did not use someone as an asset. So you're just saying.
Tony Schaefer, John Catsimatidis.
Yes, John.
Now people don't remember; it's been a long time ago. Yeah. What did he get out? So people realize, want to understand how guilty he is. What secret information or non-secret information did he get out that everybody was upset about? And was it justified to get out?
Well, I believe some was not. So again, if it was just a tranche of information given to Assange from without direction, then you publish it like the New York Times or any other big publication does. I mean, publications.
So what was it?
So it had to do with the specific information regarding the conduct of the Iraq War, specific information regarding cables, State Department cables relating to the Iraqis.
Yeah, we went in there and got rid of Saddam Hussein, who was balancing the power with Iran.
That was part of it, but more directly, John, it was about the issues relating to the Iraqi government and duplicity between us and Iran. Because if you remember that during that time, we were actually dealing with Iran behind the scenes and some stuff, and I think that's what made it so sensitive. Is the fact that it showed that the Obama administration wasn't actually telling the American people everything they're doing. Plus, there was some other wrongdoing relating to the strikes against Iraqis, innocent Iraqis. There was some gun camera footage that showed some Reuters journalists being killed in combat by Americans where the Americans had broken the rules of engagement. Things like that were very embarrassing. And I think that those were the things which really got the Obama administration upset.
Between us, I think that he should have published it. The heck with them. The American people have the right to know what the heck is going on.
I agree with that. But the problem, like I said, John, was Sean Parnell and others felt that there was tactical information provided which gave the Taliban and others some understanding of what we were doing. And that's where Assange should have drawn that line, and he didn't draw that line. That's the issue.
Thank you, Tony.
Really
Schaefer.
interesting. Thank you, Tony.
You.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for getting the American people the truth. That's what they want.
We love Tony. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, with a person with diabetes, I want to know what the heck is going on with Dr. Mark Siegel. I understand there's a new
inhaler. New inhaler for diabetes. Yeah. Dr. Siegel, tell us about this. This could be a huge breakthrough.
It's called Effexa. It's not new. It's been around for about a decade. And what is new is I think that we're finally realizing that our companies that make insulin, and John's going to appreciate this as a consummate business person, which is I put two and two together here. The companies that are making our insulin, there's only three major ones, and two of them also make weight loss drugs called Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound. And guess what they're focused on? The weight loss drugs. So this is probably making the shortages worse. We don't have enough insulin. One of the insulins called Levemir is going off the market. People have a 30 to 60-day wait for their insulin, and there's about 2 million people in the United States that would die without their daily insulin. So now University of Washington went ahead and checked the old inhaled insulin and found it works just as well. If you take one shot a day of insulin and then use this inhaler, and you're judicious and you know what you're doing, and you don't have asthma, by the way, that it can provoke, you do just as well with this. So I'm happy to talk about this because I like the idea of brushing off drugs or treatments that have been discarded. We're so quick to go to the newest and the latest and the brightest bauble that sometimes we overlook the obvious.
Well, that is wonderful news for people with diabetes. I mean, there's tens of millions of people.
There's 38 million people with diabetes, but about 5 or 6 million actually use insulin on a regular basis, and 2 million would die without it. So this is a major, major thing. Very important. Not that weight loss isn't, by the way, but it shouldn't be an either or. And of course, they capped the amount of out-of-pocket expense you could pay for your insulin, but only for Medicare. That hasn't gone across the board. So people are also broke and they can't get their insulin. So that's happening also.
Anything else you want to say, Doctor? We have a minute left.
I'm also studying the debate, and I've decided that I was literally sitting on the set at Fox on Saturday night when Trump was giving that rally, and we were in stitches because of how funny he is, and he's funny and he's interactive. And he said, "Look, this is my cognitive test. This is my cognitive test." And I thought, I interviewed him, and he doesn't use a teleprompter, and he doesn't have notes, and he doesn't want to see the questions. So in a way, he's right. So I'm looking from that debate to see what the interaction is. I think they should have no holds barred, because if you want to see who's capable of doing it on their feet, responding quickly, decisively, like you need the leader of the free world to do, I think that that's a major, major issue.
Yeah.
So
I agree. By the way, but the problem is they're not going to be able to really go after each other. They're muting the mics. So it's like, I agree with you. I agree. Dr. Siegel, I wish it was that way too, but you can give us your professional opinion after the debates too.
Is let's not mute the mics and let's have a bilateral cognitive test.
Yep, I agree. Before the whole country and the whole world.
Speaking of restaurants, it's a little too hot to meet John anywhere tonight, so I'll take a rain check.
Well, it is hot, unless they don't have air conditioning.
You would think so.
Oh, yeah, maybe I do. Okay, I'll take it.
I think you can take it.
Dr. Mark Siegel, thank you for everything you do for all Americans, and God bless you. And thank you.
Thank you very much. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to Professor Alan Dershowitz about the gag order now partially lifted against Trump. What does it mean? That and a lot more.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC. Way up north, to Alaska. Way up north.
Well, we are playing North to Alaska.
We found Alan Dershowitz.
We did. We had to comb everywhere. And we didn't look at Alaska at first, but now that we know where he is. What are you doing in Alaska, Professor?
Hey, I'm on a cruise with my wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law. We're in this big city called Sitka, Alaska, which was the Russian capital of Alaska before the Russians foolishly sold it to America for 2 cents an acre. It's the most beautiful spot in the world, and they sold it to us for 2 cents an acre.
We should have bought Greenland.
I tell you, we tried. I mean, if Mr. Katzimatidis was around, he would have bought all of Russia at that price.
Yeah, that's a bargain. By the way, are you doing like any like Iditarods, or are you watching the whales? I love Alaska.
Well, there's no Iditarod because it's the summer, but I went on a trip with Huskies, and they pulled me a few miles, 16 Huskies. It was great fun, and we saw whales, and we're having a terrific time.
Wow. Well, speak of time. Did you hear the news?
Back to the States.
Yeah, back to reality. Did you hear what's going on with Trump? The judge came out, and reduced the gag order partially so he can do witnesses, which means he can go after Michael Cohen.
Yeah, but too little, too late, and he can't go after the judge's daughter, which he ought to do. If they can, you're going to Biden is going to say you're a convicted felon 34 times. He should say, look, I have a complete answer to this, but my hands are tied because this New York judge that unfairly convicted me, which he's allowed to say, let me tell you, I'd love to tell you a little bit about his background and about his relatives, but I can't. And you're being denied the right to hear the truth from me. It's not my First Amendment rights. It's your First Amendment rights. And they're making me debate Biden with one hand tied behind my back, and it's unfair. He ought to make a big deal about that during the debate. Yeah, he can talk about the witnesses, but he can't talk about the jurors. He can't talk about the daughter who is raising big money.
You can't talk, Alan. You can't talk about Colangelo being run on a contract for the Justice Department in the White House.
Yeah, and I think he should be free to say anything he wants under the First Amendment. I can't believe the New York Court of Appeals actually said there's no First Amendment right involved here. There's no more First Amendment right than to prevent prior restraint. The framers of the First Amendment talked explicitly about prior restraint. I was one of the lawyers in the Pentagon Papers case. I know about prior restraint. A gag order is prior restraint. It's a core violation of the First Amendment. How dare the New York Court of Appeals say it's not a First Amendment issue? Of course it's a First Amendment issue, and they should have reversed it. Even Judge Marchand said today, well, I'd like to keep this going, but I can't because of the First Amendment. And so he had to limit the gag order, but it's too little too late. And you can't have a marketplace of ideas with one of the stalls in the marketplace being partially shut down. And that's what the gag order does. Look, I think the debate is going to be fascinating because nobody cares about the issues in the debate. This is a debate between two exhibits. Exhibit A is the President of the United States, and everybody's going to watch to see whether he's competent, whether he can govern, whether he's just a surrogate now for Kamala Harris who will take over. That will be what people are watching. And with Trump, it's going to be an issue of does he slip up? Does he say something foolish, as he said in the past? It's going to be character. It's character versus competency. It has nothing to do with the merits. You can actually watch the debate probably with the sound off.
Or listen to it on WABC, because we'll be on.
That would be the best thing, yeah.
Absolutely. Professor Dershowitz, Craig Eaton has a question.
It's going to be the most watched television in months and months and months. And I'm really looking forward to it. But I think President Trump needs to be cognizant of the fact that he can't attack him. He shouldn't be attacking him. He should just stick to the issues. Focus on what he did when he was the president and move forward and make his case to the American people.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that.
No attacks.
I agree with that. And I think the reason that Trump has the advantage in this debate is he can control what people are looking for about him. He can avoid saying what he said about John McCain. He can say things and control himself, whereas the competency issue is not within Joe Biden's control. If he's asked a series of questions and he is unable to answer that, that's not something he can prepare for. And so I think Trump has the advantage because of the nature of what we're going to be watching for in this debate.
Yeah, I think so, too. Professor Dershowitz, also the other thing we're bracing for to see what happens this week with the Supreme Court is the immunity issue. That's supposed to come at the end of the month. It's a few days left.
Yeah, but I think they've extended their calendar now a couple of days. I suspect they're having a problem. I don't think this is a conspiracy to delay the opinion so that the case can't go forward until after the election. That's what some, conspiracy theorists are saying. I think the court is divided, and I think we're going to see 6 opinions here. And in the end, I think they'll split the difference. I think the plurality of the majority will say, of course he has immunity for things he did as president that were presidential, and that immunity, of course, extends beyond the time that he's no longer president. But he doesn't have immunity for purely political acts. And if they're smart, the Supreme Court will say, and we remand the case back to the district court for a determination of precisely which acts are presidential and which acts are outside the presidential immunity. That's how I predict the case will come out.
Now, you said they extended it. Do you know how many days? That's interesting.
I don't know, but usually they end by the end of this month. But I think they're going into a couple of days in July. At least that's what I've heard. I haven't confirmed it, but that's what I heard. And, there's no rule. They could do several things. They're not going to. They could hold the case over and say we're not going to decide it until next term. They did that with Brown versus Board of Education back in 1953, 1954. They could say, we're not ready. We're going to come back and reconvene in the middle of July. I don't think they'll do that because all the justices have vacation plans. They go off. They teach at universities in Europe. They do other things over the summer. So I think they're going to want to get the last case resolved before they take off on vacation.
Professor Dershowitz, do you think that, like Judge Morshon, like the rest of, I think, the country and the world is going to be tuning into this debate, and seeing, okay, are there any violations, based on, and then definitely go, okay, well, let me write down these 5 violations or these 10 when I go to sentencing on July 7th. Do you think he actually is going to say, look, these are other ones that we're going to add because they claim he's violated it a whole bunch of other times because Trump doesn't want to be hamstrung. And what is he going to do at sentencing as a result?
Well, first of all, he gives the Trump people a good appellate issue because you can't sentence somebody for violating an unconstitutional gag order, and the gag order is unconstitutional. He's challenged it, and the American public has the right to hear his points of view on everything. I don't think he should violate the gag order, but I think he should make the gag order an issue in the debate so as to blunt Biden's otherwise advantage of being able to call him a felon, 34-time felon, and Trump can't answer. He can't give a full answer. He can give an incomplete answer, but he can't give a full answer, and that's not fair to the American public. Forget about Donald Trump. It's not fair to you and me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Professor Dershowitz, we want you to have a great time up in Alaska.
I appreciate it.
Oh, have fun. How beautiful.
Be back soon.
Have a great trip, Professor.
Does the television work? And the radio work?
It does.
Okay.
No, television works. I watched the last period of the Stanley Cup playoffs last night, and I'm going to listen to the debate, obviously. I'm going to be in Anchorage for the debate. Yeah.
How beautiful. Have a great trip. We can't wait to hear more about it. Oh,
good. Take care. Be well. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful.
Well, guys... Well, that was a good show.
It was a great show. Definitely a lot on. I can't wait to watch the debate.
What do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.